They've been watching you. Since the day you were born, hell has tried to figure you out. Why? Because you're different. You carry something they can't touch, can't copy, and certainly can't destroy. Chosen one. Have you noticed that the attacks aren't random? The betrayals, the misunderstandings, the isolation, it's all intentional. And yet, through it all, you're still standing. Not because you fought back like everyone else, but because something deeper has always been guiding you. But here's the truth they never wanted you to know. You've had the most powerful weapon all along. Not your words, not your fists, not even your tears. The weapon is silent, invisible, but unstoppable. It doesn't make noise, yet it shakes the enemy's foundation. And once you learn how to use it, they won't be able to touch you again. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it is, how to activate it, and why it terrifies everything that's ever tried to destroy you. You see, most people are asleep. They walk through life thinking everything they face is just coincidence, bad luck, toxic people, or random hardship. But not you. You've always felt like something deeper was going on, that what you're facing isn't just physical, but spiritual. Because it is. There is a war going on, and you were born into the center of it. Not because you chose it, but because of what was placed inside of you. As a chosen one, you've always carried a light that threatened darkness. And darkness doesn't just sit back and let you shine. It comes after you quietly, strategically, and relentlessly. This war isn't fought with weapons you can see. The enemy doesn't always come dressed as your enemy. Sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's family, sometimes it's a thought. Sometimes it's a voice inside your own head whispering that you're not enough, that you're alone, that no one understands you. But those are not your thoughts. They are spiritual attacks designed to wear you down and make you surrender your power. The chosen are not just attacked physically. They are attacked through delays, confusion, emotional trauma, and spiritual pressure. The most dangerous weapons the enemy uses against you are subtle: distraction, discouragement, disconnection. Have you ever noticed how when you start walking in purpose, the attacks increase? When you begin to pray more, fast more, speak less, love deeper, and separate yourself from drama, the warfare intensifies. That's not random. It's because you are becoming dangerous. You're awakening. You're starting to realize who you really are. The enemy doesn't waste energy on people who are already lost. He targets the ones who are rising, the ones who carry impact, the ones whose silence shifts atmospheres and whose presence alone irritates demons. This is why you can't fit in, why people turn on you without a reason, why doors shut in your face that were supposed to open. It's spiritual. You're not just facing people, you're facing forces. You've been fighting spirits wearing human skin. That's why nothing makes sense unless you see it through the lens of spiritual warfare. The job that mistreated you, the partner who betrayed you, the friends who disappeared, the isolation you went through, it all had a purpose. The enemy was trying to break you before you discover your weapon. But here's what the enemy didn't calculate. You were built for this. You've been forged in silence, shaped in fire, and trained in the wilderness. And the more the enemy tried to crush you, the more you learned how to listen. Because true chosen ones don't always fight with noise. They fight with awareness, with clarity, with divine instruction. This war isn't new, and it's not fair, but it's already won. You just need to understand the position you hold in it. You're not a victim in this battle. You're a secret weapon. And once you start walking like you know that, the entire spiritual realm shifts. You were never meant to fight like the world. You were designed to dominate in silence. One of the biggest mistakes chosen ones make is trying to fight spiritual battles using human weapons. It's natural. When someone disrespects you, you feel the urge to respond. When people lie about you, attack your character, try to block your blessings, your instinct tells you to speak up, explain, defend yourself. But the moment you react in the flesh, you've already lost ground in the spirit. Because the enemy isn't after your reputation, your position, or even your name. He's after your energy. He's after your peace. And when you fight using noise, you give him exactly what he wants. Arguments, revenge, clapping back, over-explaining. These are the weapons the world uses. But they don't work for the chosen. You're not ordinary. Your spirit doesn't operate in the same realm. When you try to use carnal weapons, you lower yourself to the enemy's level. You step off your spiritual throne and enter a battlefield you were never supposed to be on. You were designed to sit in heavenly places, not wrestle in earthly chaos. The enemy wants to drag you into the dirt because that's where he thrives. But every time you engage in drama, gossip, pettiness, or emotional reactions, you give him access. And don't think the enemy won't bait you with emotions. He knows your triggers. He knows exactly what buttons to push. He'll use people close to you, people you thought you could trust. He'll send accusations at the exact moment you're getting closer to breakthrough. He'll whisper lies through others' mouths, trying to get you to lose control. Because he knows once you start reacting, you lose spiritual visibility. You lose discernment. And once you lose that, you stop hearing God clearly. Even your words can betray you. Many chosen ones don't realize how powerful their voice is, so they waste it on battles that don't matter. You explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You speak when silence would have confused the enemy more. You post things just to prove a point, not realizing you're feeding the very demons you're trying to defeat. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you if he can distract you, and if he can provoke you to fight in your own strength. He knows you'll burn out before you ever reach your calling. Chosen one, this is where maturity begins. Knowing which battles are distractions and which are divine. Learning that every fight isn't your assignment, that you don't have to respond to every attack, that being quiet isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The most powerful people don't always speak. They watch, they discern, they wait, and then they move in divine timing, with divine strategy and divine authority. Some of you have been drained spiritually, mentally, emotionally, not because you're weak, but because you've been trying to fight using broken weapons. You've been swinging your sword in the dark, wasting energy on enemies that were never your real enemy. The real enemy is not the person talking about you. It's the spirit behind them. And the moment you realize that, you stop fighting people and start mastering the battlefield. You stop being reactive, and you become dangerous. The truth is, many of the attacks you've faced were sent to get a reaction, not to destroy you, but to pull you out of character. Because once you're out of character, you're out of position. And when you're out of position, you're vulnerable. But the moment you put down the noisy weapons and embrace the silent one, everything shifts. Your power returns. Your vision clears. And the enemy? He has no idea what to do with someone who doesn't react. Here it is, the part they never wanted you to understand. The part the enemy has tried to keep hidden from you your whole life. The weapon that doesn't make a sound, but breaks chains in the spirit. The weapon that isn't taught in schools, isn't glorified on stages, and can't be copied by those who aren't chosen. The silent weapon is your spiritual stillness. Not silence as in doing nothing, but silence as in alignment. Stillness, clarity, peace in the middle of war. The ability to sit, observe, and respond only when heaven gives the instruction. You've been trained to believe that power looks loud, shouting, proving, clapping back, dominating. But in the kingdom of God, power is different. Real power is not noise. Real power is when you walk into a room and spirits shift, not because you said a word, but because of what you carry. Real power is when people come against you and you say nothing, and somehow their own schemes collapse. Real power is knowing that God fights for you and trusting Him enough to stay quiet while He handles it. The Bible says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." That is not just poetic. That is strategic. Stillness is a weapon because it shows trust, and trust unlocks divine protection. While others panic, the chosen one waits. While others respond in fear, the chosen one moves in faith. The enemy has no strategy for someone who doesn't react the way the world does. Your silence disrupts demonic patterns. It starves spiritual leeches. It creates confusion in the camp of your enemies because they expect you to lose your temper. They expect you to fall apart. They expect you to respond so they can twist your words. But when you remain still, when you respond with spiritual wisdom instead of emotional impulse, you leave them powerless. The silent weapon is also discernment, the ability to hear beyond what's being said, to sense the spirit behind the smile, to recognize when a battle is beneath you. That inner voice that says, "Don't say anything right now, don't go there, don't respond." That voice is your protection. Every time you listen to it, you're activating the weapon. Every time you ignore the urge to react, you're building strength. The greatest victories of your life won't be seen by people. They'll happen in silence. When you chose not to fight a dirty battle, when you walked away from chaos, when you held your peace and let God move. The enemy hates this weapon because it cannot be manipulated. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be controlled. When you're silent, the enemy has nothing to twist, nothing to respond to, nothing to feed on. It's like cutting off the oxygen to a fire. That's why chosen ones often go through long seasons of isolation and misunderstanding. It's training. God is teaching you how to fight without moving, how to win without explaining, how to walk with spiritual authority without the need for validation. Understand this. Silence is not passivity, it's precision. It's knowing exactly when to speak and exactly when to stay quiet. It's spiritual timing. Even Jesus, when he was on trial, chose silence. He had the power to call down angels, to prove his innocence, to shut the mouths of every accuser. But he said nothing, because he knew the power of silence. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. He was letting the greater plan unfold. This same power lives in you, but you have to activate it. You have to stop trying to explain yourself to people who are spiritually blind. Stop arguing with those who are being used as vessels of confusion. Stop wasting breath on battles God never told you to fight. Every time you choose stillness over chaos, clarity over confusion, prayer over panic, you are using the weapon, and it is working. Even when it looks like nothing's happening, heaven is moving. The enemy is watching, nervous, unsure, because you're no longer predictable. You've tapped into the divine weapon that needs no noise to conquer. If you really want to win the battle, you need to understand the mind of your enemy. Not just his tactics, but his psychology, how he thinks, how he studies you, how he waits for your weakest moments. The enemy is not reckless. He is strategic. He doesn't just attack randomly, he observes patterns. He watches your habits, your reactions, your insecurities. He studies what triggers you. He learns where your emotions override your discernment. And then, when the time is right, he strikes, not to destroy you in one blow, but to destabilize you slowly through mental and emotional pressure. The enemy knows he can't stop your calling. He can't block your destiny. He can't erase the anointing on your life. So what does he do? He attacks your focus. Because if he can distract you, delay you, discourage you, he doesn't need to defeat you. The war he's fighting isn't just for your life, it's for your mind. And one of his favorite weapons is noise, confusion, clutter, chaos, drama. He'll stir up storms around you not to destroy you immediately, but to pull you out of spiritual alignment. What the enemy fears the most is a focused, grounded, unshakable chosen one. Someone who isn't reactive, someone who knows who they are, and who refuses to give emotional energy to nonsense. Because here's the truth: demons feed on reactions. Every time you explode in anger, every time you explain yourself to people who don't deserve your words, every time you argue just to defend your image, you're giving them fuel. Your reaction is their invitation, and silence, that terrifies them. Silence strips the enemy of control. He thrives in noisy environments. He stirs up confusion, then sits back and watches you unravel yourself. He doesn't need to touch you when he can get you to self-destruct. And that's why spiritual stillness is your power. It breaks his rhythm. When you stop reacting, the enemy has no script to follow. He starts questioning his own strategies. When you remain calm, he starts panicking. Because now he's facing someone who isn't predictable, who isn't emotional, who isn't easy to manipulate. The enemy manipulates through people, situations, even your own thoughts. But the root is always spiritual. That sudden conflict out of nowhere, that friend who switched up without warning, that emotional heaviness you can't explain, all of that is designed to provoke a reaction. Because once you react, he studies how. He learns what works against you. But when you give him nothing, when you choose stillness over stress, prayer over panic, silence over shouting, you block his access. He fears silence because silence reveals strength. It shows discipline. It reflects trust in God. The enemy can't function where there's order. He thrives in chaos. So every time you refuse to be pulled into noise, you push him back. That's why Jesus said, "My sheep know my voice, and the voice of a stranger they will not follow." If you're always reacting to every voice, you won't hear the voice that matters. And the enemy knows that. That's why he sends noise, to drown out the voice of God in your life. But when you're still, when you quiet your soul, you begin to hear again. You see clearly. You regain strategy. You discern who's really with you, who's just a distraction, and what the real assignment is. Silence realigns you with heaven. It protects your focus, and focus is fatal to the enemy's plans. So remember this: the enemy doesn't fear the loud, emotional, always talking version of you. He fears the version of you that is still, alert, and spiritually aware. The version that no longer reacts, but observes. The version that knows when to speak and when to let God speak for them. That version is dangerous. And once you become that version consistently, there's nothing the enemy can do to stop you. Knowing about the weapon isn't enough. Power comes from use. Authority comes from application. A sword untouched is still a sword, but it changes nothing until it's drawn. The silent weapon God placed within you won't activate on its own. It must be chosen, practiced, lived, and the first step is discipline. Silence is not natural in a world full of noise. Stillness feels unnatural in a world that worships reaction. But for the chosen one, silence is the soil where clarity grows. To activate the silent weapon, you must build your life around spiritual discipline. Not performance, not routine, but relationship with God that trains your spirit to stay calm when the world shakes. This begins in the secret place. The world wants your voice to be public, but your power comes from what happens in private. Before the chosen one speaks, they listen. Before they act, they discern. You have to develop a lifestyle of quiet presence. Not laziness, not avoidance, but sacred solitude. That means taking time every day to disconnect from voices, from noise, from distractions, and listen for instruction. Because silence isn't just about the absence of sound, it's about the presence of awareness. When your environment is silent, your spirit becomes sensitive, and sensitivity is what activates your spiritual authority. Next, you must master your emotional responses. The enemy will keep attacking as long as you keep reacting. So stop feeding the cycle. Every time you respond out of impulse, you weaken your position. But every time you pause, breathe, and stay grounded, you're activating the weapon. You don't have to answer every message. You don't have to explain yourself to people who twist your words. You don't need to correct every lie told about you. The moment you decide that your peace is more important than your pride, your weapon comes alive, and people start to notice. Not because you're louder, but because your silence becomes undeniable. Another way to activate the weapon is through word discipline. Your tongue holds power. Every time you speak, you're either releasing fire from heaven or fuel for the enemy. Silence doesn't mean you never speak. It means you choose when and how to speak. Before you say anything, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is it spirit-led? Or is it just ego? The enemy knows how to push you to speak prematurely, to make you explain what God is still building. But silence protects what is still in process. Guard your words, guard your mouth. Use it like a sword, precise, rare, and effective. Then comes discernment. You activate the silent weapon by becoming more spiritually aware than emotionally reactive. That means watching patterns, listening to what's not being said, noticing when something feels off, even when it looks right. The more you grow in discernment, the less noise you need. You start to see people's spirits instead of just their words. You feel when the atmosphere changes. You recognize when a conversation is just bait. And because of that, you speak less. But what you say carries weight. You walk into situations and you already know the intention. That's what makes you dangerous. And above all, the silent weapon is activated through trust in God's timing. You have to believe that He sees what you don't, that He's working even when it looks like nothing is happening, that the silence isn't punishment, it's positioning. When you stop trying to control everything, prove everything, force everything, you step into divine flow. And that flow is what confuses the enemy. Because now you're not fighting on his terms. You're moving on heaven's time. When you release the need to defend yourself, God steps in and does what your voice could never do. And every time you do that, the weapon sharpens. It grows stronger. The silent weapon isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing the right things with spiritual precision. It's a lifestyle, a mindset, a posture. It says, I'm not afraid to be misunderstood. I don't need to be seen. I know who I am in the spirit. And that type of posture changes the battlefield. You're no longer reacting to life. You're moving with divine authority. You're no longer explaining your worth. You're walking in it. And the enemy? He's watching from a distance, unable to touch you, because you've activated something he can't access. Stillness under fire, peace in the storm, power in silence. There's something about stillness that the world has forgotten. In a time where everyone wants to be loud, quick, and visible, stillness has become a threat. But for the chosen one, stillness isn't passivity. It's power. It's not weakness. It's warfare. Because stillness is your shield, not the kind of shield that blocks attacks in the physical realm, but one that absorbs and nullifies spiritual pressure. When you are still, you are covered. You are hidden. You are guarded by something that the enemy cannot penetrate: divine alignment. Stillness is the space where God speaks loudest. While the world shouts opinions, reactions, drama, and fear, stillness brings you back to truth. It centers your soul. It protects your thoughts. It guards your emotional energy. Every time you choose stillness, you are telling heaven, "I trust you." And heaven responds by surrounding you with clarity, with peace, with guidance. Most people miss divine instruction because they're moving too fast. They pray, but they don't wait. They ask for answers, but they don't create space to hear them. Stillness creates that space. It silences the noise of the world so the whisper of God can be heard clearly. When you learn to dwell in stillness, you stop being reactive. And this is crucial because the enemy thrives on your movement. The more you panic, the more he pushes. The more you rush, the more he redirects. The more you respond to every attack, the more you lose spiritual stamina. But when you stand still, unmoved, unbothered, centered in your spirit, he loses control. The storm can rage, but you don't flinch. People can accuse you, but you don't explain. The enemy can try to provoke you, but you just watch. Because you know, stillness doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is being handled on your behalf. In stillness, your discernment sharpens. You begin to see motives clearly. You sense what conversations are distractions. You feel when a door isn't from God. You don't have to guess anymore. Because stillness puts you in sync with divine timing. You no longer chase. You no longer force. You no longer need validation. You wait, and what's for you begins to find you. That's the beauty of stillness. It puts you in position, and position is everything in spiritual warfare. A chosen one out of position is vulnerable, but a chosen one who remains still, grounded, and aligned is untouchable. And don't think stillness is easy. It takes strength. It takes spiritual maturity to hold your peace when you're being lied on. It takes divine awareness to be quiet when your emotions are loud. It takes surrender to stop trying to fix everything yourself and let God move in His time. Stillness is not just what you do, it's who you become. You become a person who doesn't break under pressure, who doesn't need to prove anything, who doesn't run to defend because you know the truth defends itself. You become a warrior without shouting, a destroyer of strongholds without lifting your voice. That is the shield of stillness. There are moments when the greatest power you have is the decision to say nothing, to do nothing, and to simply stay rooted in who you are. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every attack requires a reaction. Some things are not distractions. They are spiritual traps. And the only way to disarm them is to stand still and let God do what your hands can't. Stillness is a weapon because it invites divine intervention. It says, "I'm not going to fight this battle the world's way. I choose heaven's strategy." And when you choose that, something powerful happens. The battle shifts. God steps in. The outcome changes. Stillness is your fortress. Not a physical wall, but a spiritual one. a place where peace guards your mind, where clarity protects your decisions, and where faith becomes your covering. And the more you dwell in that space, the more the enemy realizes he cannot reach you anymore. He can shout, but you don't flinch. He can send attacks, but they don't land. Because stillness has made you stable. Stillness has made you untouchable. And in that quiet place, you've become more dangerous than ever before. The silent weapon isn't just theory, it's proven truth. All throughout history, and even today, chosen ones who embraced stillness have seen their enemies crumble without firing a single shot. Their silence became a battleground where victory was won before a fight even started. These testimonies aren't just stories. They are evidence of a higher power moving through those who refuse to react in the flesh. Consider the story of a man betrayed by his closest friend. Instead of lashing out or exposing the betrayal, he chose silence. He prayed. He trusted God. Months later, that friend faced consequences he never expected, losing influence and respect, while the silent man rose stronger and more respected than ever. The enemy tried to use noise, but silence protected the chosen. This is no coincidence. It's spiritual warfare in action. Then there are countless testimonies from women who refused to answer gossip or lies. Instead of defending themselves, they held their peace and focused on their purpose. The chaos around them faded. Opportunities opened. The false narratives lost power. Their silence was a shield, deflecting attacks and confusing the enemy's plans. This kind of victory comes from restraint, not reaction. In the spiritual realm, silence creates confusion. Demons expect noise. They expect their victims to respond with fear, anger, or despair. When those responses don't come, the enemy becomes disoriented. The invisible forces that target chosen ones become frustrated and retreat. This retreat creates windows of breakthrough, doors that open where there was once blockage, peace that replaces turmoil, favor that replaces rejection. These testimonies aren't just isolated incidents. They reflect a spiritual principle repeated in the lives of prophets, kings, and warriors throughout the Bible and beyond. David, though a man of war, often chose silence and prayer over confrontation. Jesus himself remained silent before his accusers, wielding silence as a divine weapon. The quiet faith of many spiritual giants became their greatest power. If you look closely, you'll see this pattern repeated in your own life. Moments when you chose to hold your peace rather than engage in conflict. Moments when you prayed instead of reacted. Moments when you trusted God instead of your own understanding. These moments weren't weaknesses. They were the activation of your silent weapon. Each time you resist the urge to respond in anger, you strengthen your position. Each time you refuse to defend yourself, you build your fortress. So today, let these testimonies remind you that silence isn't absence. Silence is strength. Silence is a strategy designed by the divine. And when you walk in this truth, you become part of a legacy of chosen ones who conquered not by shouting, but by standing still in faith and letting God fight their battles. Chosen one, now is the moment. You've heard the truth. You've seen the power of silence. You understand that this weapon is already inside you, waiting to be activated. This is your call to step into that power, to rise above the noise and confusion, and to claim your divine authority. No longer will you react out of fear or anger. No longer will you let the enemy manipulate your emotions or steal your peace. Today, you decide to walk in stillness, to fight with wisdom, and to trust in the plan that heaven has for you. Take a deep breath and commit. Say it in your heart. I will no longer give my power away through reactions. I will choose silence, clarity, and divine timing. I will guard my peace as my most precious weapon. I will listen for God's voice above all others. I will trust that every attack is a setup for my breakthrough. I will stand still, knowing that God fights for me. Now bow your head and receive this prayer with an open heart. Lord, strengthen me in my stillness. Teach me to be silent when the world demands noise. Help me to master my emotions and guard my words. Fill me with your peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround me with your divine protection. Let my silence be a fortress that confuses the enemy and ushers in victory. Guide me to walk in your perfect timing and authority. I am chosen, I am protected, and I am victorious. In Jesus' name, amen. Rise, chosen one. The battle is already won. Your silence is your weapon, and your victory is certain. If this message has spoken to your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with another chosen one who needs to hear this truth. Your silence can be their strength. Like this video, comment below your thoughts or testimonies about how silence has worked in your life. Join this community of warriors who choose peace over chaos and wisdom over noise. Subscribe now to stay connected for more divine strategies that will elevate your journey. Remember, your silence is your power, and your victory is already sealed.